The Mega CD sucks, right? Everyone knows that. There were no games, and it was never worth the price tag, etc, etc, etc. Well, tell that to this mother. I love Snatcher, we love Snatcher, and if you've not played it, mate, you're gonna love Snatcher. So stay tuned and find out exactly why. All coming up right here in today's Gaming for Ages. Snatcher, the legendary cyberpunk adventure game, with an even more legendary asking price. Oof. Back in 1994, while everyone was saying the Mega CD sucked, me and my friends were having so much fun with timelessly awesome games like Sonic CD, Final Fight CD and Snatcher that the slings and arrows being hurled at the console had little meaning. Yeah, the Mega CD was expensive, but after witnessing Sonic CD, I knew I had to get one. And so, with some cunning wheeling and dealing, I was fortunate enough to get access to the mighty beast and apply its additional horsepower to my humble Mega Drive. Plus, having my own CD player back at a time when cassettes still ruled the roost made me feel pretty cool, even though I clearly was not. The capacity of CDs gave developers far greater space to try out new things, and one way they briefly landed on to use all that lovely extra room was FMV. Used to add presentational gloss, with extensive intros and endings to many titles, they also made entire games utilising this feature with the likes of Night Trap, Sherlock Holmes and Rebel Assault. These were notoriously hit and miss, and the fad died out pretty quickly, but there was one game that came along that used the additional space more wisely, with speech aplenty, a brilliant soundtrack and an extensive story that would defy the constraints of even the largest cartridge of the day. And that game alone still stands as reason enough for the Mega CD to have existed. Hideo Kojima's Snatcher. Yep, that's right. Long before Metal Gear Solid brought Hideo Kojima to the attention of the masses, he already had quite a few numbers under his belt. From the NES and Famicom Metal Gear 1 and 2, to the original version of Snatcher released on the PC 8801 and MSX2 in 1988 in Japan, and brought in for late assistance in the development of the chibi-like role-playing remake SD Snatcher for the MSX2. Hideo Kojima was beavering away on quality titles long before the PS1 was even a thing. Converted to the PC Engine CD in Japan in 1992, it took until 1994 before we received what is to date the only official English language version of Snatcher, when it finally came to the West courtesy of Sega's Mega CD. And in my opinion, it was worth the wait, as little did I expect that this graphic novel style adventure would instantly become one of my favourite games ever. Snatcher focuses on the exploits of Gillian Seed, an ex-army recruit who, 3 years ago, had been found in Siberia with his wife, Jamie, both of whom were now suffering with amnesia. Clichés be darned, because we all know that memory loss is a key ingredient for any fine tale. With no progress in their memories returning over time, the pair have become estranged, leaving Gillian to try and piece things back together with the only thing that was coming back to him, the word Snatcher. Snatchers have become quite the nuisance in 2047, with these pesky cybernetic beings killing off key members of society and taking over their lives, effectively replacing them with Terminator-like robots with artificial skin that are difficult to distinguish from their original counterparts. Couple this with their objective of wanting to take over the world and eliminate the human race, it really shows these Snatchers for what they are. Bang out of order. And it's about time that you, playing as Gillian Seed, put an end to their tomfoolery once and for all. Not one to do things by halves, Gillian goes straight into the heart of battle by signing up to a government-funded organisation to deal with this menace and become a junker, a type of investigative detective tasked with hunting down these bioroid fiends. And thus the stage is set for your adventure. Set against the backdrop of tragedy, the game brings you up to speed on an event known as the Catastrophe, which was a biological weapon wiping out half of humanity, as well as a huge earthquake that required the reconstruction of Kobe into Snatcher's futuristic playground Neo Kobe. But as the roaring sax sings out Snatcher's opening number and the camera pans across the city skyline, things feel good. And things feel very good as you head into Junker HQ for the first time to be greeted by the lovely lights of Mika Slayton. This particular lady had quite the effect on me as a youngster. Gillian wastes no time in making advances towards her, with a bit of back and forth flirtation straight out of an old school Bond film. It's some good fun and games, but push it too far and things could really take a turn for the worse, so you better tread lightly. This lady ain't taking any funny hijinks. Move on, Gillian, mate. I'll quit while you're ahead. Headquarters is littered with interesting rooms and characters to meet, and you are soon equipped with all the necessary paraphernalia to get cracking on your case. Most notable of which is your sidekick, sporting a very familiar name for any budding Kojima enthusiast.
Metal Gear? That's a pretty weird name.
It's a jovial time, but before you know it, things take a turn for the worse as proceedings are interrupted by an urgent call from fellow junker Jean-Jacques Gibson. And so, with your feet having barely hit the ground, you're whisked away on your first mission. And quite a first mission it turns out to be, as before long, you're facing a flurry of enemy robots known as Insectors, extracting data chips from the wreckage of a fallen robotic comrade, and even worse, rifling through the possessions of the still warm corpse of your former associate. And that's all before two Snatchers attempt to blow you up. All in all, it turns out to be quite the first day on the job. And so, by the time you've been through the gauntlet with this first foray into junkerism, you should have a basic grasp of how the game works. Gameplay basically comes in the form of negotiating conversation sequences, picking the right response at the right moment to progress to the next branch of the conversational tree. It might not sound all that exciting in theory, but once you're immersed in the story, you'll be digging through the dialogue and actions with great interest as the story unfolds before moving to the next exciting part of the adventure. And that's one of the great things about Snatcher. The intrigue from the awesome story grips you, draws you in, and holds you right there living and breathing every moment. The emotion conjured up in this playthrough gave me feelings of trepidation, excitement, sadness, and had me laughing at some of the sillier moments in ways that I haven't experienced in another game since the Sega Saturn days. In fact, back at the time, playing Snatcher was the first instance that I ever bought into the idea that a game could actually be like a movie, and I'd still rather play this over and above any of the recent cinematic games being churned out at Sony. Snatcher really is that good, and if the idea of being a super cool detective-like character hunting down Terminator-style foes appeals to you, then this is one awesome bad boy that has your name on it. So the story is great, but it's not just all about the chit-chat. Action sequences also feature in the form of gunplay, with you having to be on your guard ready to cap any potential assailants with your department-issue pistol at a moment's notice. There are various sections where this gameplay features, with each segment becoming increasingly tricky and exciting as the game progresses. Justified compatibility is featured, but by the time I've faffed around trying to plug in one of those, I'd be Snatcher fodder in about 2 microseconds, especially since I don't actually own one. I think I'll stick with the pad on this one. So anyway, back to our adventure. The game leads you across various settings in Neo Kobe, as you meet more and more intriguing characters, from the weird and quirky informant Napoleon to super cool bounty hunter Random Hajil, as well as a few other cameos from a gathered ensemble of recognizable Konami characters. A pretty cool Easter egg for any fans of the once fine company. Oh, and then there's Isabella Velvet. Wowzers. As the story twists and turns, you gather and follow leads, eliminating wrong suspects but also tracking down assailants that need taking out. Thankfully, detective work comes fairly naturally for me, as anyone who's ever read our website, Grigorig, could attest to. The breakthrough I made in my ongoing investigations to establish a link between Terry Hatcher and video games is well documented over there, and my work in identifying a Nintendo Wii in one of her social media posts has become nothing short of modern day journalistic legend. But we'll get round to more about that another day. Anywho, before you know it, you're hot on the trail of these metallic menaces, unearthing their hideouts, uncovering their plans, and finding out shocking revelations on who in society has actually been snatched, with some pretty surprising and alarming results. This all leads you to the game's intriguing and stunning conclusion, and as your headquarters gets infiltrated by the enemy, and you find out a few fascinating home truths, things start becoming clearer as you gradually peel back the curtain about who you really are and what's occurred in your forgotten past. It's one heck of a roller coaster ride, and as you hone in on the grand finale, prepare yourself for the huge unveiling of what has really been going on, as well as who has been pulling the strings behind the scenes. And in usual Kojima fashion, this was also my first taste of one of his trademark lengthy cutscenes, with the ending spanning an eyebrow-raising, for the time, 25 minutes, although that's quite conservative in the light of some of his later Metal Gear efforts. So the game's a beaut. Graphics, sound, presentation, story and gameplay are all 10 on 10, but are there any negatives? Well, I guess for some people, sifting through the dialogue can be a chore, especially in the instances when you've got to weave your way through to that last correct option in the conversation to trigger the next part of the story. But I find these moments to be few and far between, so I personally can put up with this small grind. I've also seen people comment on some of Gillian's antics. Regarding the ladies, Gillian finds himself in the unique predicament of having to negotiate interactions with three particular love interests in the form of his former wife Jamie, newfound flame Mika, or Katrina, the model daughter of your slain former colleague. Best stay away from that one, mate. Don't be a wrong'un. While some find Gillian rather creepy or pervy, the self-deprecating tongue-in-cheek humour of Gillian trying it on with a host of ladies is hard to take seriously as he falls flat over and over again in the most comical of manners. And besides which, whenever I talk to the ladies in the style of Gillian, I find that it's always gone very well. Anyway, the only other thing I hear levelled at Snatcher is that the game can be fairly short. You can make your way through it in 6 hours if you're just interested in following the main story from A to B. But if you like me, you enjoy savouring the delights of the world and spending a little longer sampling all that's available to you, it may take you a little longer. And reading at a snail's pace with my old man vision certainly must have added a couple of hours to my playtime at least. My eyesight ain't what it used to be, that's for sure. And that's about it. Well, unless you consider the whole to be continued style ending with a sequel that never came to be an issue. I'm still waiting out here, Kojima, we're ready when you are. So in conclusion, there's a reason why I picked Snatcher as my very first video on this here channel, as this game is awesome. An absolute beauty of a title that's given me years and years of fun, and I've enjoyed it no less in revisiting this incredible experience in the making of this video. And while it's hard to argue that any game is worth the crazy prices being asked for it these days, it's great to know that there are other ways to experience its goodness out there, should you so desire it, because it's really one that needs to be played. Give it a bash, you won't regret it. I'll catch you later, gaming guys and girls. Take it easy and keep it locked here on Gaming for Ages for more retro goodness soon. Laters.